Good afternoon and welcome to the Kentucky Center for Mathematics. This week we are talking about developing multiplicative thinking, and today we have Kentucky Center for Mathematics Director and Resident Expert Dee Crescitelli. So she is here with us, and Dee, I look forward to learning from you.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. I am very excited that you all are joining us today. We're going to talk through, we started this series yesterday talking about multiplicative thinking, and we started at the very beginning of that sequence, and today we're going to go into the sequence of multiples. We're going to talk about the importance of that. So my name is Dee Crescitelli. I am the director at the Kentucky Center for Mathematics, and that's my contact information, and I'm really glad that you are here today. Lots of great things can be found on our website there at kentuckymathematics.org. There is a whole series of things. We've been meeting at 2 o'clock for several weeks now, and you can go back and find all of the recordings and resources from all of those, and lots of other great resources. Today we're going to look at some research into the progression of mathematical reasoning. We started that yesterday in a previous session. We're going to look at the standards that build the sequence of multiples. Going to look at the foundation of that, and then we're going to end with some great activities for helping students build facility with that. If you attended yesterday's session, you saw my friend Julie do some work with the progression of mathematical reasoning that comes from Pam Harris's Math is Figure Outable website. One of the things I want to just point to for today is the realization we all had yesterday about how those nest. They are interconnected with one another. And so additive thinking builds from counting strategies. Multiplicative reasoning builds from additive and counting strategies. And I point to that because today we're going to spend a good bit of time talking about the importance of those counting strategies. So what has been missing in lots of the work that we've done over the last 20 years is this understanding that kids need to develop each level of reasoning so they can build on it for the next one. And so we shortchanged counting, thinking we were helping kids move on by telling them to add on, right? Boom, hold the number, add on, right? And then we tried to shortcut them into multiplicative reasoning. Let's just memorize these things and move on. We have come to learn over time is that it really is important for students to develop all the previous strategies, because counting is essential to actually doing additive thinking. And then additive thinking is actually essential for doing multiplicative reasoning, and so forth and so on. Okay, so it starts with, and it's really important that we get counting and additive thinking done right. So the Kentucky standards, since we're going to base this on Kentucky, but the other state standards are very related here. This is about forward and backwards number sequences. In Kentucky, we put some particular notice on skip counting by 5s, 10s, and 100s, but we're going to talk today about the importance of skip counting both forwards and backwards with other sequences as well. And one of the things this helps lean into for folks who are worried about grade level standards, second versus third grade, that whole identifying patterns, right, and deciding what makes patterns special, what makes them tie into different properties of operations, actually having a sequence in our head, understanding what multiples are, and being able to count those both forward and backwards is actually really important in getting to this standard as well. So one of the things we've shortchanged a lot along the way is the number word sequences. We do a lot of counting in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade, and we put a lot of time and effort into getting everything to 120, because we want to cross over 100, and then we stop counting. And I have never understood why we stopped counting. I'm not sure how kids are supposed to understand what comes after 999 unless we keep counting. And then over the next sets of things, we want them as intermediate, middle school, and high school students to develop these ideas and concepts around what is 100,000, what is a million, what is a billion, what is a trillion. And we never actually pay a whole lot of attention to where those fall in the sequence of numbers. So I think that understanding the number word sequences and counting should continue well beyond first grade. And it just so happens that Robert Wright and some other authors agree with me on this, and it is part of the book Developing Number Knowledge. Those of us that do a lot of work in this field just fondly call this book the Red Book. And in it, they are very clear about students who actually really do need to learn the number word sequence of decables by tens, centibles by 100s, and then 1000s. Some people call those centuries. And they also need to know the number word sequence by 2s, 3s, 4s, etc. Right? You can decide any number of those are helpful because they actually are central to developing strategies for both multiplication and division. Understanding those sequences, being able to count in larger chunks actually helps students see those bigger chunks and understand them. One of the things we've done for a really long time is spend a lot of time on the symbolic, to the detriment basically of paying attention to both the quantitative and the verbal aspects of numbers. We shortchange any of those, right, at our peril. All of those are very important to understanding number, to having students actually develop number sense. Okay, in this case, verbal matters. So one of the things that lots of folks are quick to point out is we shouldn't leave kids at skip counting, and I agree. Skip counting shouldn't be the only tool in kids' arsenals for beginning to think multiplicatively, for getting through. They're not going to become fluent if that's where their stuff is in skip counting. On the flip side of that, we also can't skip that. We really can't skip counting. Having a sequence, understanding the sequence of numbers is really important. Dr. Jennifer Bay Williams and Jenny Kling just published recently a book where they walk through, as you work through to get to fluency, there are 3 phases of getting there. Phase 1 starts with counting. We also can't skip it. Okay, so no skipping, skip counting. What I want us to see is what skip counting looks like as reasoning. Right? So kids can use skip counting as a way through a problem.
At the orchard, apples are packed into trays. Each tray has 8 rows of apples with 5 apples in each row. How many apples in each tray?
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. That's 40 apples.
Good girl, thank you.
So talk to me about what you saw there in her reasoning.
For one thing, she was able to recognize that there were 5s, and that meant she needs to count by 5s. I had a student in math intervention one time that no matter how many were in the group, she would count by 2s. She just didn't get that idea that you need to match up what you're skip counting by to how many is in each group in the array or whatever.
Right, so just because skip count, right, doesn't cut it, there also has to be some understanding of what it is I need to skip count by, right? But once you know that, if you have that sequence, then you can do that, right? So this little girl's ability to skip count by 5 was really useful for her in solving how many of those things there were there, right? Anything else anyone noticed? I'm just going to point out she had the quantity there in front of her if she needed it. She didn't seem to need it. She could skip count by 5, but she had that in case she needed. She can only get so far. Okay. Now we're going to see another instance of a child using skip counting to reason through a problem.
Marcy has 4 bags of lollies, and there are 3 lollies in each bag. How many lollies does she have altogether?
3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12 lollies. Well done.
Did everyone hear him? He's a little more quiet. I think yes. Okay. What are some things we noticed about the way he worked through that problem?
Sounded like he started with the skip counting by threes, 3, 6, 9, but then he had to switch to by ones, 10, 11, 12.
So he did, yeah, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes. So it got him started, right? He could get so far. And then he went back to counting by ones. Okay. Did he have anything in front of him? Quantity-wise, he did not, right? So being able to skip count could get him started, and then he could finish without actually having to have the quantity. Okay. Okay. Any questions?
It almost appeared like he sort of used his fingers, maybe more just as a fidget toward the end there.
And it was, I think it's because he got to 9 and he was like, I'm not sure what to do, right? And so I can't tell, you can't see his hands well enough to know, did he do that to check? Was it a, I'm not sure of myself, you know, kind of twitch, but yeah. Can't always see everything, right, when a kid's doing it. Oops, I skipped this. Nope.
So is that then considered counting, or is that considered skip counting, like your reasoning with skip counting, or are you back to counting, a counting strategy?
So it's sort of in between. They call it advanced counting. It's leaning into additive thinking because you're doing it in chunks, right? So it's really, it's additive. It is more additive than not. When he got to the counting by one part, he was obviously counting, right? It's looking at it in bigger chunks. So it sort of falls right in on the line in between those two. Okay, good question. Any other questions? Because this is one of those things that we have neglected a lot in later primary and definitely on into intermediate. And I would say middle school teachers, there's some counting we should be doing there as well. I've got lots of activities here. I think there are 80 some pages of things that you can do and card sets to do for building facility with sequences. And so we'll dig into that now. And so one of the first things that you can do is count, just count, right? And so we have lots of different things that we name different versions of count around. And I'm actually going to ask you to unmute all however many of you guys there are now at this point. And we're going to count. If you've got lots of noise in the background, I guess don't. You can just count, and I trust you that you're going to count. Actually,
There's 46 of us.
I would actually like for us to count. So I'm going to ask you to count with me. And so what I'd like us to do is we're going to count around by fives, but I may not start at 5, right? So you're going to have to start wherever I start at 5. Okay. So we're going to count now. We're going to count by 5s, and we're going to start. So we're going to count 15, 20, 25, 30,
35,
40,
45,
45, 50, 55, 60. Go ahead and stop there. That's some wicked echo with you guys counting in different places. That's pretty fun. I just wanted to see what happened. That was pretty cool. One of the things that we do a lot of and have done too much of is always starting at 1 when we count, and always starting at whatever it is we're counting by, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, you know, 10, 20, 30, wherever we start with whatever the multiple is, and we need to start different places and see what happens, and have kids practice it in different places. Also, anything we do forward, we should do backwards, right? So you start at 60 and go 55, 50, so forth and so on. Okay. Another thing that we can do to help kids that are at the beginning of this, particularly if you're working with first, second, and third graders early in the year, is what we call an emphasis count, where you count by ones, but you're emphasizing the multiple that you want to pay attention to. So if you're skip counting by fours, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, right? And you can get really into that. You can have them pop up or pop down if they end up on one of the emphasis numbers, and you really get kids sort of actually getting into that and paying attention to where numbers fall in that sequence. Again, anything you do forwards, you should also do backwards. This helps with adding, but then also helps them with subtracting if we go backwards, and we have historically not gone backwards enough. Okay. The other thing, sorry, I went backwards instead of forwards on my slides, is disappearing sequences. In the handouts, you'll see the directions for this as a paper pencil activity. You would have, or you would write for the student, either way, the counting sequence that you want them to work on, right? So if you give it to them, you know that it's accurate. If you have kids do it, you may want to have them double check that they've written their skip count correct to start with, so they don't learn an incorrect count. And there's an example there by twos. You have the students say the sequence while touching each number as they say its name. Really good for also connecting that verbal with the symbol. And there are some kids that actually still need to work on that well up into primary grades. And you do that until they can say it without hesitation. And then you can have them write it on the back of the paper for later reference, because you want them to start marking off the numbers one at a time and count again until they can say it without needing the numbers at all. Some kids have to see the numbers in order to be able to say the names. Right? So you can practice that, and that's a thing kids can do on their own to work on their number sequences. There's also all sorts of different numeral rolls that you can do. You can make those with just cards. You can put them on strips of paper. You can do them digitally in a Jamboard. One of the things you can do is just cover them as you go and have kids say the sequences. These are the ones, this is by 7, obviously, but you can have that go and cover until you've got them covered, you know, how many you want to have covered as kids practice those. One of the most interesting things I found teaching intermediate middle school was there were lots of kids that could do the 7s because football, you know, the touchdown plus the goal made 7 something that they internalized really well. I always found that really interesting. Other settings that you can do for disappearing sequences, just loose cards. Those are cards for math recovery, but you can do any sort of number series of cards and lay them out and then just turn them over as you're helping kids figure out what would go there. And then if you've made a numeral track, because lots of you guys use those in your work, you put whatever sequence you're in there, and so you could do the skip counting with emphasis on that, where you're just 1, 2, and then you open the whatever it is you're paying attention to, or you can put a full skip count sequence already in there and have them cover and uncover them as needed. Another activity that could be used to build understanding and remembering the sequences of multiples is a number ladder. There's a little blurb about that in the handouts as well. Those can be drawn on a whiteboard, those can be drawn on a piece of paper, those can be pre-printed to give to kids, those can go on Jamboard or any other number of technologies. And what it does is you can skip, oops, I went the wrong way. It's helpful if you go the right way with your slides, is you can keep counting up. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, okay? I'm not gonna have us unmute because that echo was a little wicked, but with me as I go backwards, count backwards, okay? So 27, whoops, I didn't set it to go backwards. My apologies. Here we go. 27, 24, 21, 18, 15, 12, 9, 6, 3. Now we're back at 0. Again, anything we do forward, we should do backwards. We've been skipping that a good bit, so we can't do that. No more skipping. Several of the things that we've done this COVID-19 experience, we've referenced Berkeley Everett's website. He's got some amazing things on there at his WordPress site. We're going to go look at one particular video. Just pay attention because I'm going to ask you to notice and wonder. So, what are you noticing and wonder? Feel free to unmute or type in the chat.
Well, the kids are familiar with the 10 frames. That's exactly what's there is 10 frames. And as you count, 5 come down at one time, but then it's also the corresponding number on the number grid is floating back and forth. So the kids can see both of them, at the same time and make that connection again.
And if I had kids, I would actually be having we'd go through that and do that notice and wonder bit. And then I would have kids pay attention. You pay attention to this side, you pay attention to this side, and then let's have a conversation about the different things, sort of that you were noticing along the way. It's pretty darn cool. He's got all sorts of different ones there. That in particular are focusing on some of the sets that we are paying attention to for the Kentucky standards and making connections. And so there are several different amazing, this one works with a vertical number line and I love it. There's just all sorts of really good ones there for paying attention to.
I like the flipped hundreds chart on that one, because you're actually, it's going up as you're increasing the amount, as the quantity is increasing, you're actually moving up. And so that gives that extra visual of increasing.
It is, because the standard 100s chart always was confusing it was confusing for me as a kid, I remember, because when 1 is up here, as I'm getting bigger, I'm going down, and that seemed very counterintuitive to me, right? And that is true for lots of our kids, right? As numbers get bigger, this goes bigger, right? And it actually is a nice precursor for a vertical number line. It's really good noticings to have there, but also makes it make more sense from a number line perspective as well. So thank you for noticing that, Julie. Anything else? He has some amazing stuff on that site, so I suggest you check that out if you are not familiar. Other activities that are really good for a building facility with sequences of multiples and just good number sense altogether are card games. It is one of the silver linings, if there are such things, from all the things that we're having to go through right now with COVID-19 and needing to be at home, is board games and card games are having a little bit of a resurgence, which is an awesome thing in terms of kids developing both social sharing skills, but also some good numeracy math skills, because there's lots of things built into that as well. And so we're going to walk through 3 different sorts of card games that you can play, and you've got directions either embedded in this presentation or and or also in the handout sections. So junk multiples is this really cool one set of things. I'm actually going to let them tell you how to play it. It's pretty darn cool.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. You caught us playing a really fun math version of junk. Here's how you play.
All right, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna set up your cards in a row to whatever number you want with however many multiples you want. So for us, we're doing the multiple of 3, so it goes from 3 to 30, so like coinciding with that.
You can pick whatever range you want, whatever multiple you want, go by 1s, go by 5s, go for as long or as little as you think is necessary. And we're using math recovery cards, but you can make these cards with index cards, you can make these cards with a deck of cards, you can make these cards with Post-it notes. I don't know, you'll see that our cards are kind of DIY'd as well as we play. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to pick up a card, and I got 21. All right.
That's fun.
So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna count down the line in the multiples of 3. Bear with me. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go 21. I'm gonna switch these out. Junk card. That is unfortunate.
We hate those cards.
That means my turn is over. It
So
moves on to Henry's turn.
now that goes on the side, flip face up, and I pick I got a junk card. Guys,
That is unfortunate. Now you'll notice our junk cards are literally Post-it notes, but you know what? It hurts the same. So
your junk cards, if you're using a deck of cards, would be your kings, your queens, your jacks, and
or
your
Post-it
jokers.
notes with a frowny face. It gives off a similar message. 12. I'm gonna go 3, 6, 9, 12. I flip up and this is a 9 or a 6?
That's a 9.
9. All right, so this is really fun. You'll notice that I got another one. This didn't happen before. Now, since I have another card, I just keep going until I hit a junk card. So 3, 6, 9. Maybe I'll pull through and get another one. Oh, nope, junk card. All right.
Why have I got none yet? I have a feeling. I swear.
Wow, that is unfortunate. Now I keep going.
Really good shuffling we got going on here.
18. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and junk card.
Oh.
And so that's how you.
So that gives us a good sense of how to play that. It's pretty fun. It doesn't require a lot of stuff, which is a great thing. One of the other activities that if you've been to any of our courses, you'll see we've got 4 kings that shows up in lots of things. I've also seen it called treasure hunt. You lay out and there are directions for how to build those, and then there's a set that has the multiples of 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think. 2, 3, 4, and 6, can't remember, in the handouts. But you'll lay out the cards, you lay them out in a row, with the first part being the 3, whatever it is. In this case, we're going to be skip counting by 3. And you have the extra cards laid out, and you figure out where you draw one from the draw pile. And so in this case, we've got 9. So we'd go to where 9 would go. You place 9 where it would go. You pull the extra card from that space. So then you would be placing 15. So you look for where 15 goes. You pull the card that's there. You pull the 27. You put 15 where it goes. Got 27. The decks are color coded so that you can place them by color. And then the deck that I gave you, they're also done in different fonts so that if you have someone who is colorblind and can't distinguish between some of the colors, they can actually use the fonts to figure out which row that it would go on, place that where it goes, pull something else, place the card where it goes, see what you get. Treasure. Goal is to try to get all of them in before you pull all 4 treasure cards. I've seen teachers make them with their principals' faces, with their faces. You make the treasure cards whatever you want them to be. It's basically a very fun math version of a solitaire game. Pretty cool. And then there's quick draw multiples. In the handouts, you have cards to do this from 2s to 12s. So you have all of the decks for all of the multiples for what is 3rd grade standards in most places, and then lots of places just go on and do 11s and 12s because they're useful. And so those are there. I'm not going to play the video. There's a video embedded in this. It will be embedded in the slides version that you guys have of this presentation, where this fabulous teacher is explaining how to play this. She is from New Jersey, and it is everything you expect, and an amazing description of how to play this. I've got it set in here to start in the middle, but she walks through making the cards and everything from beginning to end, so kids could do this for themselves at home. But it's really, really good for having kids play together to figure that out. And she demonstrates playing it by yourself so that you could basically play against yourself, which is actually pretty fun as well. But it is a very fun paired card game that you've got some more information about there, because now we've made it to 2:30. There are any questions about any of those activities, because I went through those kind of fast. Okay. The big moral of the story is that we should not skip counting. We need to give kids good practice with internalizing those sequences of numbers because it's really useful to them in building the beginnings of multiplicative thinking. It makes addition and subtraction easier. They'll be doing less counting and actually more addition and subtraction. And then they start to lean into actually looking at and thinking of things multiplicatively. We have lots more left in this week of developing multiplicative thinking. Tomorrow we're going to be structuring numbers multiplicatively, and then on Thursday actually digging in and developing strategies for multiplication. And then on Friday we're going to look at monitoring and assessing multiplication. And I really would like to welcome you back to see the full sequence. Thank you all so much for being here today. If you're not already following us, you can follow us on Facebook and at Twitter. And there's our website, KentuckyMathematics.org, where again, you'll find all sorts of amazingness about mathematics, good resources for teachers and for families, and all the recordings from all of the sessions we've done so far. And that is me. Thank you so much for joining us today.
We want to thank Dee for putting the session together and really bringing highlight to the idea that skip counting and those multiples are really, really important. What great resources, Dee. I have seen the treasure hunt play live with kids, and boy, do they love it. It's one of the well-loved games, and Four Kings seems to be another one that's very that's popular across Kentucky. This is the time we'd love for you to unmute and give some shout out to Dee on things that you loved with regards to the presentation. So feel free to unmute.
I like the children in the examples rather than just adults showing the games.
Yeah, it is always nice to see kids playing, and there are some pretty good videos out there of kids playing, which is good.
Dee folks are saying that they enjoyed seeing the girls in there demonstrating how to play the games, and of course their exuberance was something that I was drawn to. So that's super fun with regards to that. As always, the Kentucky Center for Mathematics, our goal is to bring you 30 minutes worth of content that then allows you to kind of think about it, give you some really good activities and resources for you to be able to use in your classroom. Of course, we freely give the presentation and the handouts. We always give credit to those groups that help kind of help us with our thought processes. And so today we brought to you a variety of resources. You can find everything on the Kentucky Center for Math. We hope that you'll join us this week. We have more with regards to this developing multiplicative thinking. And so we thank you from all of you guys who joined us across the nation. See you guys.